All right.
Yeah.
Triggers. What do you
So
remember?
triggers. Yeah, we're pretty much doing this impromptu at the moment, and just really looking at a trigger of mine would, I think it would be around cleanliness. I think it's top of mind for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have a need for order, cleanliness, organization. Guess that's within order as well. There's also a need for efficiency as well. There's this need to get it done right away, which um, I judge clashes with your needs as well around that.
So I'm confused because we're
Yes,
talking about needs and we're talking about triggers. So I'm like, I want to get to the juicy trigger part.
yeah. So
What
the
do
the the
needs have to do
trigger,
with triggers, anyways?
mm, yeah. So the trigger is when the kitchen, I judge because the trigger is like a judgment of what's happening. Is it's messy,
Mm-hmm.
and the judgment there is um, you're being inconsiderate because I have to clean up this mess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so what happens is this charge builds up, and it becomes this duty to, and the judgment's cleaning up after your mess. Yeah. So I'm saying that out
Cool. No,
loud. What's
say all the
yeah.
judgments. This will be fun, actually. Okay, say even more. Go for it.
Yeah. So it's more like this feeling of, it's not even a feeling, it's a judgment of oh man, I gotta do all the work. There's more work for me to do. And it just seems like you're not being supportive of me. You're not being considerate of me, that I'm the one that has to clean this up. And the judgment I have is like, if I was cooking, then I'd make sure that uh I cook and clean along the way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that causes me to feel frustrated, irritated, annoyed, and then resentful,
Mm-hmm.
right? While I'm doing it, right? That's
Right.
what's alive. Yeah, yeah, and that's what's present.
Okay. So I hear you have a need for support, for cleanliness, and I also hear
Mm.
you have a need, and I know you like my cooking.
I love it.
So for those of you that know, Dre doesn't cook. I do all the cooking. And what's super interesting about this and about judgment and triggers is that we make all these assumptions. Because I remember one day Dre came in and I had some things out on the counter and he put it back in the fridge, but I was preparing it and thawing it to put in the soup I was making. So he made an assumption that it was messy and I hadn't put something away, but what I was doing is actually making sure it was ready to be cooked. Um, and what's super interesting is I often clean up many things and dishes that he often doesn't notice. Um, and so I'm curious as I'm saying that, because there was a few things a few weeks ago, like the bananas and other things that I made room for in the freezer, and you didn't realize I'd done any of that. And so it's so interesting how our judges um, come out and make these assumptions about the other person, um, and can't ask in the moment. And this is where we're compromised. We were talking about compromising, where people are like, "Oh, well, I'll let it slide. I won't ask for what I need. I'll have to have a win lose situation here." Um, and I'm curious how that ties into that. If you feel like you compromise half the time, that's curious. I've never had this conversation with you
Yeah.
before.
I mean, yeah, we're just flowing with right now, and yeah, like using that example, like cleaning up the kitchen and then making an assumption that you left it out, and the assumption was, oh my god, like the judgment is you're forgetful, you're lazy, right? But then there was really no communication around that. I could have communicated to you and said, "Hey, babe, is this supposed to be out? Just get some clarity, right?" But I
Mm,
didn't. I put it away and made an assumption, and which causes me to be triggered and have all those negative thoughts and negatively charged emotions, right? Which didn't serve me or you, and you felt it in the space. And it's interesting because when I'm in judgment mode, when I'm making what we call judgments, evaluations, interpretations, assumptions, analysis, I don't see what you did well. I didn't see what you did. I only see what you did wrong.
Yeah.
That's why it's a judgment, right? It's like it's so easy for me to recognize when I'm in that state of judgment, when I'm triggered, to see what's wrong with the other person. And what comes out of my mouth is a judgment of that. It's so easy for me to say, and I would say anybody who's in saboteur mode, what they say next is usually negative language, right? Judgment language. So it's so easy. And I'm saying this is that it's okay. That's what happens when I'm in saboteur mode and judgment mode, right? So I just want to say that just to normalize that. Um, yeah.
I like what Chris, and we're gonna get. I love you guys. You guys put all these information about how you're doing, right and wrong, or duality and not truth. That's so right. Yeah, I cook, you clean, but you want me to clean when I cook. I can go into, well, what are you
Yeah.
doing, and how are you contributing then if I have to do all the cleaning after I
Y-
cook?
Yeah, so then it requires a conversation, right? To
Yeah.
happen. Like to clear up those assumptions and to make up to create new agreements based on that. So the next time I see something on the counter, I've been down the episode of like, oh, the judgment and having these negatively charged feelings, and then realizing, oh shoot, I was totally out in La La Land. Next time I'm gonna ask you, is this
Mm.
supposed to be out? Right? It's course correcting, right? The next time, let's say you were to cook, because yeah, we do have an agreement. You cook, I clean, right? I gotta recognize that because you told me in a place where I'm not triggered, where you actually do clean when you cook. You actually do put away dishes. You actually do wipe this thing down and do that, right? Which I didn't notice because my judge was out judging what's off, what's wrong. So when I can come into that with that awareness, I can be more considerate. Oh, right. And be less charged about that, right? Just like when you told me how you like to have pockets of workspaces of your stuff laying around. And for me, that used to be really trigger of mine because I like things to be clean and organized. It creates a sense of calmness for me, right? So until we didn't have that conversation, I was just triggered and judging you for being messy, right? Being disorganized, right? So when you told me, "Hey, I'm doing this because you grew up," well, I'll let you tell the story of why you have those things around.
Yeah, I wanted to just acknowledge Chris and Tracy's where they're at as well. Um, there's a whole other thing in there because you have an office and I don't really. Um, but yes, let's get to that because that's a good thing because I think that's a big thing for people. Sex, money, and cleanliness in the house drive people nuts. Tracy, oh, you're tired, wanting to sleep a lot, triggers daily. But getting better at recognizing them and with the help of my amazing man, figuring out why I'm getting it, usually post trauma and needing to walk through it. Yeah. So, how do we do that in the moment? That's a really good question. Yeah. Triggers are opportunities to heal. You're right. They're bringing up past trauma. And how can we breathe through that without blaming each other? Needing to realize that the triggers from the past and not now. Yeah, we often project onto someone else, and they're really the what's the word, Dre? The stimulus, but actually not the reason for why we're feeling what we're feeling. So getting underneath the layers of that. Chris, pain all over. Yeah. Oh, okay. Illness, disease, November 22nd, which is today, isn't it? It is. 29th anniversary of a crime you committed. Thank you for sharing that here. Anniversaries are tough. You ended up in jail. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of shame in that, right? We have this punishment thing in our culture that I don't think bodes well. A lot of trauma there. On the flip side, a celebration of who I've become, the amount of people I've helped, heaven and hell today, deep profound shame of unworthiness surfacing for me, healing. In the same time, I'm humbled by the growth as a result. Yeah. Isn't that interesting how our pain can become our greatest gift? Oh, Chris, thank you for recognizing that. I feel seen. Thank you. Summer is an artist, creative flowing, right brain. As a man, tend to be left brain. I have organized piles, Dre, laugh out loud. Okay, it's true. Um, if I lived with myself, I'd probably be annoyed, um, to be honest. And so what I appreciate about Dre is his organization. He gets up in the morning, he cleans the dishes. It's usually all done. I don't know if yesterday you noticed that I cleaned the dishes in the morning. I don't know if you noticed that. Um,
I do.
but
I
yeah,
do.
I I tend to be. I'm definitely messier than Dre. I do leave piles, and like he was saying, part of that was I lived in a really big house, and I could never find my family members. I felt alone in a space that was empty, and one of my family members is OCD, and everything is always neat and tidy, and there's this feeling of like, can I move? Can I put something down? And it's this anxiety. Um, so what I noticed this year is that sometimes I leave things out, so I have a sense that there's life in the house. And in one of our classes, one of the moms was really upset because the kids' rooms were so messy. And we'll post it as a video. And when she asked them what their needs are for keeping the rooms messy, which is a judgment, is that they had some really profound answers to why that is. And so triggers are about needs not being met. And when I shared with Jay that my house feels cold when it's overly organized and that I can't move and I don't feel there's life in the house, you had a different feeling towards that, right?
Oh yeah, it's compassion. When I get the reason behind why there's pals around, it's because you wanted to be held. You wanted to be around life. You wanted to be around people. It was a need for connection.
Mm,
And when I
yeah.
heard that, it let go of my judgment. It allowed me to connect with you compassionately and create space and more patience to accept and just be with those pals. And if you realize I'm not as triggered as before with the pals around, right? I don't clean it up for you and misplace your stuff when you're asking is this, where is that? Because I put it away, right? So by having or knowing where that comes from, then that to me gives me the chance to connect with you on a relatable level, right? Allows me to kind of let go of my judgments a lot easier.
So taking the time, um, Chris and Tracy, if you're open, we have a check-in thing that we do. How are you feeling? What are you needing? Sometimes people, we're just too busy. We don't check in with ourselves to even have these conversations. Like I for it's been 20, 30 years I've been like that. It never occurred to me to ask myself, why is it that I leave like a pile of stuff here and a pile of stuff there? Part of it so then I know when I can come back to it and I don't have an office set up. But the other part is that um yeah, we had like a really big house and the cleaners would come and clean it. And I really, and I appreciated your reflection, Dre, on a need for connection because I didn't feel that in my home. There were people in it and there were three really messy dogs, but it felt lonely. It really felt lonely. And so as I start to recognize what my need actually is, I don't need to do what I've done to meet it as much.
Yeah.
I can start, um, you know, dancing with you in the kitchen. I can check in with you when you're working instead of, you know, having so much stuff that makes me feel like there's people around. Um, and start meeting my need in a real way rather than in an unconscious way. So,
Mm,
yeah. Oh,
yeah.
hello, Shander. Oh,
Yeah, we have
nice to see you
Chander
on here
here.
today. Yeah,
We also have Karina on IG. It's people come and Yvonne as well.
right.
Good to have you with us.
Yeah. Why don't we I'm curious and let me know because I'm touched by Chris today. It's his anniversary and trauma. Um I know triggers happen because there's been trauma. There's some really strong triggers I know that we've seen in our relationship
Mhm.
that have been brought up, um, with sometimes seemingly really um, innocuous things like water bottles and mac and cheese. And I'm curious what you might have to say about, your childhood, your trauma, how that comes out, and then how we navigate those things. And I mean, me too. I just shared my, and I didn't realize I'd get that emotional about it, but it's alive in me right now.